Hi everybody and welcome to week 7 of the A to Z property strategies with the cataclysmic David
That is
Clouter.
such an awesome C word that I can hardly compete. So I'll just say collateralized.
Thank you.
Now, we've reached one bit that was so long that we didn't go into it at the end of the last one, which is the world of commercial property, which has attracted a lot more interest recently. And there's a lot of people getting into that because there are a lot of advantages to doing commercial as opposed to residential properties. Can we start with commercial offices?
Certainly can. I like commercial offices and it's a very popular strategy for a lot of people at the moment, either keeping it as commercial offices or doing other things too, but we'll cover the other things later, shall we?
Absolutely.
So,
So, I mean, commercial offices go back to the dot, really, don't they? And very often, it also it's a cyclical thing. So sometimes discrete offices where the manager has his own little room and you have to knock on the door when you go in, and this kind of thing was very much the norm. Then in the 1960s, I suppose, that's the time when my mentor was kind of quite an innovator, and he started the idea of open plan, which he pointed out to his potential tenants was much better because if you looked at the usage per square foot or square meter, it was able to you were able to do much more. So that
yeah.
even though his was slightly more expensive, he was able to convince people that it was better to go then. And then things kind of
He
go full
also had a
circle.
lower cost because he didn't have to put up all them stud partitions, so he saved money as well.
Yes, absolutely true, absolutely true. And even though you can get sort of flexible ones nowadays, where you can change the shape of the office on a regular basis, it's still it's still not it still offers you much more flexibility. And I was at one of these big open plan kind of service type things last week, and it's fantastic to see everybody sort of working away. And
Were
it's
we working?
we
We were
were
working.
indeed.
Yes,
We
yes, yes,
were.
yes.
And, if you want to give a colleague, although people still do, they'll be sitting opposite each other like this and they'll send an email. But theoretically, I could just lean across and give you a piece of paper. But why don't we do that? I don't know.
It's easier to send an email.
And from the point of view of running a business in an office, it's much better than sitting in the living room because you haven't got the distractions of the Hoover and the moths and all those other things that you might have at home. From the point of view of an investor, you're going to be having quite long leases with your tenants,
Yeah.
which is absolutely fantastic, and this applies right across the commercial
10,
arena.
25-year leases.
Which is fabulous
Yeah.
as long as they don't go bust and the country doesn't go into sort of mega recession and this kind of thing. It's money coming in every month, and then you can concentrate on expanding your portfolio and hopefully diversifying it so you're not just reliant on management companies for catering or something, or for any
No,
particular sector that you
absolutely.
might be exposed to. So renting office space to people is great.
And it works for businesses, generally speaking, that are more than what I'd call a micro business, you and one other, because that most people will start in their bedroom and then they'll move on into commercial offices, and over time they will grow. And well, I think as they grow, that might fit a model that we've got in commercial offices, mightn't it?
It might well, and we will come on to that in a minute. But since we're doing it in alphabetical order,
Yay!
commercial retail premises is next on the list. It can't have failed to you kind of failed to notice, Andrew, and you were sitting at home kind of failed to notice that there are as we drive around the country, we're increasingly seeing now commercial units that are sort of locked up and void or have got charity shops in them.
Totally.
And there's been an absolute this internet thing that you and I thought would never catch on 20 years ago has sort of caught on, hasn't it? I don't know if you remember boo.com, which was one of the first websites which was
Yeah.
promoting clothing, and it had the most wonderful tech where you could rotate the clothes in 3D and zoom in and out and everything. Nobody had the sort of broadband connection that could use it, and so it kind of fizzled away. Although the tech is still there, but now when we look at the big players, they're not in the high street anymore with a few things on a shelf. They're in some
Yeah.
enormous out of town warehouse,
Yeah.
probably with machines picking the things off the shelves and this kind of thing, and maybe even sort of robots delivering them to your door, even
Yeah.
in more extreme cases, if you happen to live in Milton Keynes. Then retail is changing.
It is. It is. I mean, I've been inside a number of the warehouses of the type that David describes, both here in the UK. I've been in the Amazon warehouses and in Europe in warehouses by Promise and others, which are great big automated warehouses. I mean, it's phenomenal to actually see loads of clothes on racks and the racks just spinning around and robotic arms picking off the garment when you've ordered it.
It's extraordinary, isn't it,
It's,
really, and
yeah,
the degree to which. So obviously that affects the cost
it
base of the
affects,
retailer enormously because,
yeah,
first of all, they haven't got the cost per square meter of being in the town centre. They haven't got the staff costs. So this is
yeah,
absolutely revolutionary. And, the cost of keeping up a website and having people click on things is
negligible.
minimal compared to.
Absolutely. And that sort of within retail, there's a number of other premises as well as uh, box shifting type operations which are changing. You've got banks which operate retail spaces, albeit A2 business class, and because of the internet, again, they are going online because of what we covered in a previous video. I think it was video 6, was it, or 7? And we talked about the Basel funding formula, where the banks are having to sell off their branches to put reserves on their balance sheet. You've also got betting offices where fixed odds bets have been stamped on. So, what? Why would you look at an opportunity for retail, commercial retail space? Well, I think you've got to look at the market differently. And what is happening in society? We're becoming much more uh, different a consumer. We're becoming experiential. So coffee shops are springing up. Tattoo parlors, you can't get your tattoo on Amazon. Well, you could cut your arm off, send it off, and they might send you your arm back. Not sure it'll fit back on. But if you've got experiential businesses, that's a bonus. But also, certain types of businesses are struggling to find space to rent. For argument's sake, office space, and that will come on to our next strategy, where offices are getting, or people who rent offices are getting bumped out. So they're moving into retail space and renting that instead. So it's about thinking differently and repurposing the premises.
And the high street, for example, has seen such a lot of changes because back when I was a youngster, I don't tell you when that was, but it was let's say it
3
was
years ago.
before 1971, put it that way. And the high street saw a major transformation because we saw these out of town retail parks, and everybody was going there. And that was a sort of clustering, a sort of grouping together. And then we
Totally.
saw the high streets turning into restaurants. You can't, well, you could order a pizza online,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be nice, and you wouldn't get the silver service and that sort of thing. So hairdressers and that kind of thing. Again, so far there's no robot that will do that effectively. And certainly a
And you
virtual
can't
one.
cut your head off and send it to Amazon either.
You can't. I'm sure that scientists are working on that, but not just yet. And so it's nice that but people still visit the city centres. People are still living in the city centres. So we don't want to have dead communities, dead spaces.
Totally.
And we need to sort of radically rethink, and councils should think as well about how much council tax these guys pay. They should bring it down a bit to encourage these city centre things to get a bit more vibrancy.
The model needs to innovate. I mean, we're seeing groups like Into, which own a lot of the shopping centres across the UK, in financial trouble. We're seeing investment funds that invest in commercial property in financial trouble because people are going, oh, I don't want to be in that market. It's a bit illiquid. And they're hitting the buffers. But there are huge opportunities out there if you know where and how to look. We'll cover that in other videos. But David, I touched on something where office space is starting to disappear.
Indeed, because we've seen commercial conversion whereby office space is being turned into residential space. That is going to be very much dependent on the location of said office space, because if you're in the middle of some kind of retail park and on one side is the scrap merchant or something and on the other side is the timber yard, you're probably not going to be able to create a space where lots of people are going to flock to live. But if you're somewhere that was already in the middle of a vibrant area,
Yeah,
then there's every possibility that you can, with the minimum, you've got to comply with building regs if you like, but with the minimum of red tape, where you can carve up this space and create living accommodation for people. When we know there's a dire shortage, then that's got to be a good thing.
And the advantage to somebody looking to do this as a strategy is, number one, you can potentially apply under permitted development. So you've eliminated the great and the good of this world pouring over your application. You only need to meet 3 criterion to be able to qualify for permitted development. Number 2, national space standards. The government have a national space standards policy. A 1-bed flat, to meet national space standards, should be 49 square meters if it has a shower. If it has a bath, it should be 50 square meters. Now, under permitted development, it is up to you as the developer to decide how many square meters. And from a mortgage lender's perspective, if you wanted to sell these as apartments, flats, studios, they only look for 30 square meters on average. So it's less than national space standards, which means you can pack more densely. It might be you say this is shared accommodation space, like a HMO type arrangement, and therefore you only have to operate at the HMO regulation requirements, which brings it down to just under 8 square meters plus communal space. So you can really make them quite dense units. The question is, do your customers and tenants want to actually be in that space? And what you have to do is identify your market, the geography, the competition for space, and identify the niche that you can exploit.
Absolutely. This is very much a question of understanding your demographic, understanding your niche, and producing a product that's appropriate for them. Because if you don't do your proper research, you're going to end up with a lot of empty real estate, and we don't want that. We don't want that.
Totally. So let's not be depressing. Let's look optimistically, because that is a great strategy. But looking optimistically, I haven't got a lot of money, David. Can you help me out? I want commercial property. What can I do?
Now there's a thing, isn't it, really? Dare I say borrow it?
Oh, I haven't got good credit rating. Is there another way I could do it?
Well, how about grants?
I could qualify for some grants, I guess. But is that enough to buy the whole building?
Well,
or is there another strategy that we could deploy?
Well, could we apply the dreaded lease option, do you think, whereby we lease a property with an option to buy it later down the road? And we might pay a little bit of a premium for that lease, which is great from the point of view of the property owner. But then we have all the pleasure of controlling the property without actually owning it, and that can be a real winner.
So that's actually going back a strategy back to Greek times, so over 2,000 years. That's a phenomenal strategy, and I don't actually need a lot of money in that. But what I would say to those watching out there is, if the lease option that you agree, the lease term is for more than 7 years, then you will have stamp duty to pay. So think carefully about the terms you agree. Make sure you take advice from an advisor as well.
Absolutely so, because, for example, if coming back to the residential, if you're buying a flat with a 90-year lease, you can't say, oh, it's leased, I'm not going to pay stamp duty. So I think it's reasonable that there should be checks and balances in place in respect of that kind of thing. Lease options were very standard practice, weren't they, in the commercial world? It's long been the case that this has been a mechanism. It wasn't so much so, I mean, we'll obviously be talking about lease options later on in the thing, but it wasn't so much so in the residential market that became popular basically after the credit crunch to sort of get the property market kick-started again. But I don't want to diversify too much into that because that's something we'll talk about later. I will, however, talk about FRI leases, because they're quite good in the commercial world, where you are going to, it's good if you happen to be the owner of the building, because your tenant is going to repair and insure said property and won't really contact you very often to bother you.
Cover more of that on the Fs, because that's FRI leases. But what?
It will be.
I've spotted on your list, you've actually missed commercial subletting, David.
Oh, I have indeed.
I've got one.
A thing?
Oh
my goodness.
High five, David.
Hey, wow.
I got a strategy. I made one.
Kindly elucidate, Andrew.
Well, commercial subleases, this is where somebody's agreed to lease premises for a number of years. So it could be I've agreed a 10-year or 25-year lease. It could be that my business has grown or changed, and therefore I need to find other premises. But I'm on the hook to pay for the remainder of the term. So what I do is I sublease the space out to a third party, or it might be I use less space and I bring in somebody else to take up the surplus space in the property. Now, the beauty of this is if you are looking to sublease space, you can usually negotiate a better rate than the original leaseholder did because you're subsidising the leaseholder's losses. Therefore, if he's paying £20 a square foot for his retail space, you might offer to take it for £5 a square foot or £10 a square foot because whatever you pay him, you'll be taking the rates, you'll be doing the repairs and the insurance on it, but it will subsidise his loss because at the moment he's on the hook for a very large amount of money.
Absolutely. So we can assume it's the case in many commercial leases that there is no break clause. So he's
Correct.
signed up for 25 years, he's in for 25 years.
Totally. And the benefit to you as the person moving in, if you've got a vaping shop, which is all the rage at this moment in time, you want to get cheap premises, but you don't want to commit a lot to doing an expensive refurb. So these types of subleasing work very well for you. However, cautionary note, if you are looking to take these premises on, is that at the end of the lease, you have no rights to occupy the premises and no rights to negotiate a lease with the freeholder. Therefore, you might be out on your ear. So if there's only 2 or 3 years left on that lease, you might need to move at the end of it.
But if it's sort of
Or-
15 years, 20 years,
Yeah.
it's bingo.
Or you could end up paying a much, much, much higher rent akin to what the previous leaseholder was.
I think it's likely to assume that you would, because then the boot is on the other foot.
Totally.
And so unless the economy has nosedived in the meantime, you can probably look. But
So if your business is fairly light on capital equipment in the premises and refurb, that might be acceptable to you. Mobile phone repair shops, another one, vaping shops, where there isn't a lot of structure around what you do. However, if you're a business that, say you're an optometrist or you're a tattoo parlor or something where you've got a lot of equipment and fixings, or you go for a lavish refurb and you've only got 3 years left on the lease, you might not get payback and you might be booted out.
And it's probably quite likely that you would. So
Yeah.
caveat emptor. Let the buyer
Absolutely.
beware.
Sorry, I jumped in there
It's
with one you
terrific.
weren't expecting.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. I hope you'll do that more often. And also, if you're watching these videos and you think of something we haven't covered, please do tell us.
Absolutely. Put it in the comments box just below on YouTube or on whichever social media channel it is that this post gets shared on. And we will endeavour to incorporate that in a future release of a video. Thank you.
I can see one more on the commercial list as we almost come up to time. Serviced offices, and now they're a great thing. They're the equivalent, I suppose, of serviced accommodation, but for offices.
Or a HMO for offices is another way of looking at them.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, we've got a friend who did just that, and who had a big open plan office space, and then divided up into lots of little units. And they have shared facilities, and it's fantastic, and the heating is included and all that sort of thing up to sort of realistic usage levels and so forth. And so it's a one-stop shop for a small startup, and they don't have to worry, and they can just move in, sit at the desk, and start typing or whatever it is they're going to be doing.
Yeah, and they are a very good return. I mean, depending on the area of the country you're in, you can get sort of £90 a week rent on a one-person office, which they tend to be quite small, but they are nice. I'm just in the process of negotiating on a plot of land to build a commercial office on, which will be serviced offices because it sits in between 2 industrial estates and along a housing corridor where there is a lot of new builds going on. So watch this
Fabulous.
space. We might update you.
Indeed, and I think I'm right in saying, aren't I, that if the size of this unit is small enough, it also won't have any rateable value.
Correct, yeah.
So-
If you are 50 square meters or less, then you can apply for 100% exemption. If you're above 50 square meters, you can apply for a small business reduction in your rates.
Which is fabulous. So I will keep working in the sort of Harry Potter cupboard under the stairs, and I'll be okay there.
Absolutely. Well, David, we've run out of time.
Rats.
Commercial has kept us so busy for 20-something minutes, and I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. If you have, like, subscribe, hit the share button. Please leave your comments below. And we hope to see you back here in what? Will it be part 9?
It will indeed.
In the near
and
future.
I must just tell you what's behind the curtain, because the world is there, but we hid it.
Yeah.
You thought there was a wall there, but there
Well,
wasn't.
we might as well go the whole way back. How's that?
And we will see you on the next one. Take
All
care
the very
now.
best.